Hey guys, thank you so much for limping on over here to Two Awesome Men. Yeah, that's a very strange word, but yeah, you have to use something right. But yeah, so we went ahead and saw the new Eternals movie, and just get straight into it because you already saw the name of this video. I want to start this off by talking about how angry, kind of irritated I am about a lot of the review bombing that's going on.
Yeah.
Sure, there's, film is subjective, you have your own opinions and stuff. And if you dislike this movie, I understand. I don't understand, but it's fine. Nothing wrong with legitimately disliking this movie. What is wrong, is how some of the reviews we've seen, because I remember whenever the day we had to watch this, we were talking about man, this movie's getting review bombed by critics. Critics are hating it. I think it was is it the first Marvel movie that was rotten, right?
Yeah, I think it has a 48, 49% on Tomatoes.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
critics score.
Yeah,
it's a pretty high audience score, but critics score it as a pretty low.
Yeah, and you had shown me some review. I can't remember what it was from one of the critics.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty much saying that this movie felt like a left-wing book group.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of these reviews are kind of really just talking bad about this movie, trying to act like it's the worst Marvel movie to date. And I just want to say that walking into this movie, I kind of was expecting that everything was kind of getting exaggerated a little bit, the how bad the movie was. I was expecting I think it might at least be, maybe it'll be okay. Maybe all these people are exaggerating. I did not realize how badly they were just really, really getting into the very little details,
right? Yeah,
and really exploding them more than they were.
Yeah, because I went into this movie kind of expecting the movie to maybe get a little bit too on the nose with some of their progressive messages, and kind of expecting the movie to maybe not be as good as other MCU movies. But when we watched it, I was even trying to look at what were the critics not liking about this movie just while I was watching it. And I really don't understand what exactly it was that all these critics didn't like.
Yeah, exactly. And, after a while and you start looking at the one you sent me, you start really realizing what it is that some of these people don't like about it. I'm not saying this is everyone.
Yeah.
Some people may just legitimately not like this movie because of some, and it definitely, and this is honestly one of my favorite things about it, it definitely doesn't feel like a traditional MCU film. In some senses it does, but it's an MCU film. You have your CGI, a lot of CGI, and stuff like that. And so in that sense, maybe it does. But overall, if people here haven't seen maybe Nomadland,
right? Chloé Zhao's other movie.
Zhao. I'm not going to say that this movie is nearly as slow as Nomadland is. Nomadland is a different type of taste movie.
Yeah, there's no action scenes in Nomadland.
It's literally
just I can think of.
Yeah, and it's literally just people living, and that's it. It's just a movie about someone's life, and that, I know that's what a lot of movies are about, but it's it. There's not much more. It has an obvious story to it, but it's obviously just that. But this movie does take its time with a lot of things,
right?
And it really, her directorial style really shines through in this movie, and you can really tell it's her type of film.
Yeah,
I've only seen Nomadland, but considering that, I've only seen. I'm not really sure how many movies she's directed, but I've only seen Nomadland from her.
The tone in general just was a lot different than the MCU movies. One, like you said, it was a slower paced than most Marvel movies, but also just the humor was used a lot differently, and it's something that I really wish a lot of the other MCU movies did, especially the earlier ones, to where serious characters stayed serious for the most part. They may have cracked a joke or two,
exactly,
but even the jokes they cracked weren't over the top jokes.
Yeah, exactly.
But serious characters stayed serious. The comedic relief characters were comedic and were pretty decently funny, but even their jokes weren't over the top, as much as Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, exactly.
Jokes like that. Yeah. And it really, I really hope that moving forward they do the same stuff with the characters. because when all the characters are making jokes, it kind of takes away from the comedic characters who are supposed to be comedic.
Yeah, exactly.
When everybody's making jokes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, hopefully, the review bombing doesn't really like kill that idea. Like they don't look at this movie like, well, this isn't what the people want.
Yeah,
because it kind of is. I mean, if you like you said, if you look at like the audience score for this film, it has a pretty high score.
Yeah, which is surprising because if anything, I would have expected the audiences not to like this movie and the critics to have. Because it was a slower paced movie than most Marvel movies. I figured a lot of people have been bored by it, which I have seen in the comment section of a lot of posts on Facebook and Instagram and all that. There's a pretty good amount of people who didn't like it. I've seen.
Yeah.
But the audience score is pretty high, and the critics are the ones who didn't really like it, at least as far as Rotten Tomatoes goes.
Yeah, and like I said, if someone legitimately doesn't like this movie because of maybe like you don't like the story, maybe even you thought it was too slow, something like that, I would understand. But like what I really do want to try to like kind of get into a little bit is how stupid it is about some of like the bad reviews.
Yeah.
Like and not all of them, but some of them. For instance, and this is one big one that was kind of brought up way early whenever Eternals was first even talked about, all the casting and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And that was the fact that this movie is probably the most diverse movie in MCU so far.
Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of got mad at that. And I think the big thing about that and why it's not an issue for me at all. Well, number one, it wouldn't really be that big of an issue, but also there's a lot of characters in the Eternals have a lot of characters in them, not just the movie itself, but the actual group itself.
Right. Yeah.
And also like if you have watched our videos in the past, we bring this up every once in a while. We're not huge comic book readers. It's not really, the comic book accuracy isn't extremely important to us, just as long as it's not wildly off, you know? And also whenever it's off, does it add to the story?
Exactly.
You know, does it take away from the story? And so in this movie, to me, there's a lot of characters in the Eternals, a lot of Eternals, you know. And it wouldn't make a lot of sense to me if they were all white.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Especially since they're not even like human.
Yeah, exactly.
So like it doesn't matter if they're different races.
Yeah, exactly. And
they've lived for thousands of years.
Yeah. And it your microphone fell over.
Yeah, it's getting a little too feely on me.
And to me, like I don't understand why that would take away from the characters. I actually saw someone today say how they felt like this movie will be a lot more interesting if they stuck with the original characters, you know. And they were saying, and they brought up all this like woke, you know, crap, you know. That's what they were saying. They're like all this woke crap took away from the movie, and I'm like, why? Yeah, like what was in those characters, you know? And in all honesty, these characters were actually really interesting. Mm-hmm. That's another big thing I liked about this movie is the characters were legitimately really interesting.
And I just want to say that at this point we're gonna go into spoilers for the rest of the video. I feel like once this video goes up, most people who were gonna go see it have already seen it, so. Just there's your final warning.
One other thing that I saw about this movie, a lot of people have brought up, is that one of the Eternals is gay. He has a husband. He has a kid,
and I think it's the first openly gay like main character in the MCU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe so. And so they have this in there, and a lot of people are getting mad at this, and a lot of people are like, "Well, why don't you just stick with the old characters and create your new characters and stuff like that?" It's like, well, first of all, like these movies are based on the comics. They're not going to just create a character in the middle of the movies. Yeah, you know, you'd get mad at that also, you know. Mm-hmm. But also, it's like, well, back then, they didn't create a lot of gay characters because it wasn't really that nicely looked upon. Right. Yeah. You know, I mean, even though I do believe Stan Lee was an advocate for gay rights, and the thing is that you know, back then, you know. Gay, like being gay and stuff like that, it wasn't really that well looked upon, you know, and stuff like that. So then it wasn't implemented into a lot of stories. But when it comes to this story, I feel like it was really nicely handled.
Yeah, it wasn't like made like such a big deal that he was gay. Yeah, it was just that he existed and he was gay.
And that's honestly what I loved about it, because you know, a lot almost every time you'll see like a gay character in movies nowadays, they make a big point across of like he's not happy with his life, he's depressed all the time,
which can be okay, but it is nice to have a different
exactly. And so it was a nice little approach, because it was just he existed. And I think that's what irritated me a lot, because a lot of people brought that up, and it's like it didn't really change that character a lot. I mean, like I said, I haven't read the comics, but I can't imagine his character was that much different. He was just gay and he existed in the movie, and that's all it really was. You know, his character wasn't like, it's not like throughout the entire movie he just kept bringing up how he was gay over and over again. You know, like he just existed. And I know, and people had an issue with that.
And like they had him kiss his husband, but I mean, in that moment, in that scene, he was about to leave his family to go help the rest of the Eternals to save the world. So like if it was like a man and a wife in a regular movie, and like a guy was about to go leave his family to try to save the world, and he kissed his wife, nobody would question it. It wouldn't be that big of a deal to anybody. So it really shouldn't be that big of a deal that he just kissed his husband when he was leaving him to go save the world.
Let alone the fact that there's an actual sex scene in this movie.
Between a man and a woman.
There is the first actual sex scene in MCU. And I've seen people bring up that, there's a sex scene in the first Iron Man. There's not a sex scene in the first Iron Man movie.
They're just kissing.
They're kissing, and it kind of inferred that they're about to have sex. There's an actual sex scene in this movie.
There's a little bit of moaning and stuff.
and it lasted maybe, I don't know, like 20 seconds. It wasn't like a long scene, you know, but that was in here, and nobody's like blowing that up. Like if you want to blow up something about like, you know, two guys kissing, and you don't want to, you know, like shove that out of the way. You know, like there was an actual sex scene in this movie, and it's not like I care about the fact that there was an actual sex scene in this movie.
It's just funny that they focus on the gay kiss rather than the straight sex scene. And just going along with this, like trying to figure out what was woke about this, because I've seen a lot of people just call this woke. Like I said, in comment sections on Facebook and Instagram, a lot of times when people are bashing it, they just say that it's woke.
Which is just the trigger where they start wailing and screaming at people. It's woke! You know, like,
and they give no context for it. They just say it's woke. But just trying to figure out what could have been woke other than just a gay person existing and then non-white people being in the movie.
Exactly.
Just one of the only other few things that I can think of is the fact that they made the Hiroshima bombing out to be like a really bad thing, and the fact that Fastos kind of gave up on humanity, lost his faith in humanity. And my thing is, the way I kind of look at it is just the fact that he could have like lost a little bit of faith in humanity with the Holocaust and everything that happened before it, but he could have felt that he still had faith on the other side. The Americans and the British and everybody on the other side. But then when they bombed civilians, then he had no faith in any humanity. And including the fact that he helped them advance their technology to get to that point, and then they used it to do that. It further made them not want to help humans anymore. And just completely losing faith.
Exactly. And also it's like a thing of like maybe he's like, he saw them do one thing. He's like, okay, maybe next thing, maybe after this they'll be good. You know, it's like a thing of him just losing. And then a Hiroshima bombing, the U.S. bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's what made him lose faith. That was like the last straw. And I mean, I haven't seen anybody bring out specifics a lot, but they do bring up woke. And I think that there is, and Brittany was telling me that she really does believe this. And it's a good point of like, they walked in there really knowing that this is a really diverse cast. They walked in there knowing that there was a gay character. 'Cause I think the gay character was kind of I think they had brought up.
I think they announced that it was going to have the first like gay character.
But I think there's two other things, and I think there's two things, and one of them is this. The Hiroshima one, I think this is one thing that kind of caught people by surprise. And it's not watch. If I were to have just what kills me is if I didn't hear about these reviews, I could have just sat there and watched this movie and not even thought like, oh, here it is. This is what people are talking about.
Right.
I could have just said, oh yeah, Hiroshima is terrible. You know, like I could have just sat there and like, yeah, I understand. You know.
Yeah.
But no, I was like, oh, this is one of them. This is one of the things I got mad at.
Yeah.
It's the Hiroshima bombing. Like and it's stupid that they got so mad at that. You know. And, you know, Brittany was saying that she's pretty sure that maybe this is what really set people off edge because it's kind of surprising. And the other one, probably, I think one of the last things I want to bring up about all these reviews is there was a little, very brief thing about glaciers melting.
Right.
It was very integral to the story, very integral to the plot, but it's not like someone stood up on like a platform and said, we need to stop all this. There's global warming happening. It's not like they had this huge speech. It's just like, oh, this is happening because the glaciers are melting. Yeah. You know, and it was so, I mean, because I figure that's another thing that people get mad at. Right. Because, you know, that's another controversial topic on things.
Which is so weird. The topics are controversial in today's political standpoint. Which, exactly. I don't want to get too political, which is weird. That's political at all.
Exactly. And so they briefly brought up glaciers melting. Yeah. And like I said, it is very big in the plot. And it really drives the story, and you really start seeing things because, you know, and it's the reason why the whole movie's happening is because the glaciers are melting, right? But like I said, it's not they bring that up. Like there's like one sentence about it, and that's the only time you ever hear about it. Yeah, you know. But you know, I guess it's enough to get people, you know, riled up. You know, but I do think those are the main four things that actually got people. You have the very diverse cast, a lot of the characters not being white. You have the one gay character that even though he was gay, didn't like become a part of it. It wasn't like his only character thing. It was just like he's gay, he existed, and that was like it. Yeah, you know. And then there's the Hiroshima bombing and the glaciers. And I really do think those are the four main things that really got some people riled up about this and really had people like, you know, really saying the word woke. Because honestly, I think what it is that they use the word woke because they can't really think of any actual real like concrete argument to actually say why it's bad. Yeah, exactly. In the movie. It's just that it made them angry, you know, went against their beliefs. Right. You know, it's just was in the movie. And that's what, like, the one thing I liked about this movie is how they really implemented all those things in the story. There was nothing big about any of them. You know, it wasn't like they made like a point of any of it. It was just happened. Yeah. It was part of the story, and it was very nicely woven and smoothly put into the story. All right,
and now we'll finally get to our actual review. Now that we've had that kind of a little bit of a rant.
Yeah, that probably lasted probably be the majority of the video. I do think it was important to bring up because
for sure.
There's a lot of things. I don't want to just talk about this movie and tell you how I felt about it. Yeah, you know, I want to explain what really made me mad about this movie.
Yeah, and it's really crazy. Which I mean, I'm not gonna say that people are just letting the critics' reviews influence them, but I really feel like I said, I've seen a lot of comments in like social media posts,
like Cosmic Book News, and
just different posts where people just like kind of not like this movie and kind of say that's mediocre. I really feel like there wouldn't be that many people saying it if the critics' reviews weren't so bad. Yeah, going into it. Yeah, and it's sad how much critics' reviews influence people's opinions on movies. Yeah. Most likely. Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to say for sure. Yeah. But I feel like it really did have an influence.
And like I said, if you go into this movie and you legitimately don't like it for any other... If the reasons why you don't like it, you can't say the word woke because of that, then okay, that's fine. But if like the reasons you don't like it make you say... it's too woke, then you're an idiot. Yeah, right. Like, you know, that you just straight up are like, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry at all, but you know, you're just stupid. So, I mean, you know, but like, if you just don't like this movie, maybe it was too slow for you. Maybe this, like I said, I don't understand, but like, that's cool. That's just like your opinion on stuff.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
But I do think it's important because I just want to bring that up because, like I said, when I was watching this movie, I was like, what is going on? What is it? I'm looking like, and it was kind of irritating because I was doing that. Like I wish I would have just been able to, and I was able to enjoy it. Like I really was. But I wish I would have just been able to sit down there and enjoy it and not think about what people didn't like about this movie throughout the entire thing. Because honestly, from beginning to end, I liked it a lot. Now, I will say, in terms of like negatives for this movie, I think some of the only things I can think of is like the first part of it is a little bit weaker than the rest of it.
Yeah. I do feel like kind of the storytelling in the first half, not the first half, like maybe like the first third or so, quarter of the movie was a little shaky. It took a little bit for the movie to kind of find its stride, but honestly, once it found its stride and kind of got really into it, it really had me really engaged in the movie and really intrigued by what the rest of the movie had in store for it.
Yeah, exactly. And even like that first, third, or fourth, whatever it was, that wasn't even bad. Yeah, it's just that I was watching, like I could kind of tell, like, okay, maybe like this is why, like maybe this is what people are talking about. But then after like that little bit, it was like, okay, this is actually getting really good. Yeah. And like it is slower and it doesn't feel like a Marvel movie, but that honestly is one of my favorite things about it, is the fact that it didn't feel like your normal Marvel movie, and it just felt, there was just something about it. It really felt real, which I heard that Chloé Zhao actually used a lot of practical effects, probably a lot of real sets in this movie. And it just felt authentic, you know? I didn't feel like I was I knew I was watching some CGI, but like, I didn't really feel like this is CGI.
Yeah, it didn't feel like factory made kind of. And that's another thing, which, I mean, not to jump to another point, but I've seen a lot of people say that this just followed the MCU formula to a T, and it just was a generic MCU movie. Yeah. But I really don't understand where that complaint's coming from.
Yeah, if you're trying to look at it from a very, very like vague standpoint, like a very basic standpoint, then I guess, but that's like all superhero movies,
right? Yeah,
like any superhero movie is gonna have, even some movies that aren't superhero movies have a very similar formula, right? But like this one right here, it really didn't feel like that kind of movie.
Yeah, it didn't feel like an MCU movie. I'm not gonna say almost at all, but like it felt very different than the past MCU movies. And just going back to the special effects, like you were talking about, the CGI in this movie was honestly some of the best by far that I've seen from the MCU. I mean, I do plan on seeing it again at some point, and I'll be keeping a closer eye on the CGI because I've seen people complain about the CGI too in this movie, which I don't understand that either. Because there honestly wasn't a point in this movie where I was like, "Oh, that looked kind of bad," except for the mid-credit scene. Which, the mid-credit scene aside, there wasn't a time where I felt, "Oh, that looked pretty bad." Yeah. There wasn't a single time in this movie. In fact, like especially at the end with the whole giant celestial coming out of the earth and the whole battle, which, I mean, that kind of followed the MCU formula a little bit because there's a big CGI fight at the end. But the CGI in it was so great that it kind of like didn't take me out of the movie at all. It wasn't like WandaVision where there's just like a bad CGI, well, not like a mediocre CGI fight at the end and kind of ruined everything that came before it. The CGI and the visuals at the end of this movie were spectacular.
Yeah. And also, it's like, if that's your point on why this is like a regular Marvel movie, that there was a big CGI fight at the end, these are like really powerful beings. Yeah, exactly. Like, what are they supposed to fight?
Yeah, and the whole, like, their whole, the leader that they were following throughout the entire movie was a giant celestial being. Yeah, exactly. Like, what are you expecting?
Yeah, I mean, if your argument is the fact that it's a Marvel movie, then don't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a Marvel movie. Don't see it. If like that's going to be your complaint for all of the Marvel movies. Like, just don't watch it. Right. If you don't want to watch it in general.
And just one other complaint that I have, which is not even that really big of a complaint because I didn't think it was horrible, but I do wish that Cersei and Icarus's relationship was written a little bit better. I do think they acted really well in those scenes, and their chemistry was really well. But I feel like the lines they said weren't the greatest. The lines they said in those scenes were kind of generic. I can kind of see where people can say that. Yeah. But at the same time, I still feel like it wasn't like terrible.
Yeah.
I still felt something for them.
Yeah.
And the ending, wherever Icarus doesn't stop Cersei from stopping the Celestial from being born, still worked.
Yeah.
But I feel like they could have done a little bit better with the build up in that relationship.
Yeah. And then, like we said, you could really feel Chloé Zhao's work in this film. A lot of the shots are really, really nice. It was they're very like, I don't want to say there wasn't anything put into them, but they really, really set the tone for a lot of the movie. A lot of the shots with the cinematography were very interesting. You know, because they didn't really try to make everything really big. You know, it just felt like you're just watching these people, you know, move around. You know, but then again, you could also tell it. But they also did more than like simply like. I always bring this up. It's really random, but if you ever see the movie like the new Pet Sematary remake, it's almost like in the shots they just try to make sure that people were in the shot, like they fit people in the shot. And this movie did feel like it did a lot more than that, but it also didn't feel like it was trying to be like an extreme, huge film. And then another thing about this movie that always needs to be brought up is the story is really good. And I saw someone. Man, we keep bringing up reviews or like people talking about it. Someone's like, how about you focus on the story and focus on not being so woke? I'm like, well, the story is actually legitimately good. And some of that has to do with what you consider woke, which like we were saying earlier, it really doesn't really go that deeply into it. It's just very brief things. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is really nicely woven into the story. The story is really good. And another thing I really want to bring up, because this movie pulled it off so well, and it's hard to pull this off well. This movie had a decent amount of flashbacks. Oh, yeah. And the flashbacks, some of them are kind of long. Mm-hmm. If you watched our Shang-Chi review, you'll see that one of our biggest flaws of that movie was how many flashbacks there were. Yeah. But it wasn't necessarily how many flashbacks there were. It was the fact that when they put them in the movie, they were at scenes where it really kind of cut off the momentum of the film. Mm-hmm. The movie is a really fast-paced film. Also, really relied on you understand these characters and their relationship to each other. Yeah. And so, whenever it really just cut off everything, it was really hard to really feel emotion throughout those, like a lot of those scenes. The way Eternals did these flashbacks, it never really stopped the momentum of the film. And I will say, I do think it had to do with the fact that this movie was a little bit slower to begin with. Right. And so the way these flashbacks were put in, they were really just going, like, as the movie progressed, it kind of just felt right where they went, And so by the time when you got to everything, you understood these characters, you understood the relationship with each other, which, because they all have relationships with each other already. And that, whenever you have a pre-existing relationship in a movie, it really helps out with getting connected with the characters. And all of these people did. They have, 5,000-7,000 years relationship with each other, So the fact that they did that really impressed me. Yeah. Without it feeling, because there was at least like 4 like flashbacks, and some of them were pretty long. Mm-hmm. And the way they put in, they really did add to the story, right? If anything,
yeah, it was really interesting just to see them go through different time periods throughout history and see what they're up to during those points. And it also was just interesting to see them trying to grapple with the fact that they can't interfere with human conflict throughout history, and it's a pretty big point because they had to explain where they were when Thanos was collecting the Infinity Stones, which was a big question that a lot of people were wondering going into this movie, which they kind of explained it in one of the trailers. But it was a big part of this movie, the fact that they couldn't interfere with anything unless it had to do with deviance. Yeah, I really liked how they wove that into this movie. Yeah, and made it a pretty big part of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't just a thing of like, hey, this is why we didn't help out Thanos. It was like, this was like the point of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
The whole point of the movie was them like really trying to like wanting to be able to help people. Yeah. Throughout their entire lives, and really understanding why they couldn't. It was a really big part of the story.
And there's a really big scene that I really loved with the guy from I forgot the actor's name, from Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Yeah,
and Dunkirk. And
I just saw his name a while ago. I can't remember what it was.
Barry Keoghan. There's a great scene. I forgot what time period they're in, but he really hated that he couldn't interfere with human conflict because he could control people's minds and make them stop fighting. And he acted brilliantly in that scene, just showing the emotion. And like we said, I just love that they made a big part of this movie, the whole conflict within the group. And I really love just the whole philosophical idea of just pretty much what this movie is about. Just the fact that should the Eternals stop the Celestials from destroying Earth, but at the same time, the birth of that Celestial will cause billions of other lives to be born on thousands of other planets. Just the whole conflict and that whole moral dilemma of it all. It's just really interesting, and I really love that it was brought up in this movie.
Yeah, I also love how like they didn't like find like an easy route to like, you know, like an Ant-Man and a Wasp. They're like the conflict between what should we do here, and they figure out a way to do both. Like they didn't find that easy way out to do both. They had to choose one.
Right, exactly.
You know? And so like and they chose one, and that's their decision. And so it was like kind of like a moral dilemma, and they chose one. They didn't just figure out some easy way to get both of them done.
Right. And I also loved how they tied in the snap, the Thanos snap, and then the snap when they brought everybody back. How they wove that into the story, because just the fact that the Thanos' snap kind of halted the Celestials' plan, but then whenever the Hulk snapped everybody back, it kind of accelerated the plan because the population grew in those 5 years, and then when everybody snapped back in, that made it to where the population was at the perfect like size to where they could give birth to the new Celestial. So I like how they wove that in there, and also the fact that Salma Hayek's character, Ajak, the reason she changed her beliefs on following this celestial being in destroying thousands of worlds was the fact that the humans didn't just give up after the snap happened. They survived and persevered, and they even fought back and fought to snap everybody back and bring everybody back. Yeah. So her seeing that made her feel a lot more for these humans.
And it's
made her change her mind.
And a lot of those things is reasons why I really don't see why people really talk about the story and how the story was like, you know, it wasn't thought through, it wasn't thought out, it wasn't good, because the story was really well thought out in this movie. Even like some of the smallest details they didn't even have to add if they didn't want it to, were in this. Right. And it really added to these characters. It really added to the story. It really added to the MCU as a whole. What I thought was really interesting was just how they pretty much pulled off the idea of like that you have the villain of this movie turned out to be, you know, there was a slight twist villain. Yeah. But it wasn't like your traditional twist villain. Like, you know, he's with them this whole time. It turns out he's evil. You know, like, you know, it's not like that. It's like it turns out that like he would actually just believe what they're doing the whole time. Yeah. You know, he believed in that. But then also there was an ounce of like care in him, and he cared for the people he was with. You know?
It honestly reminded me, because you're talking about Icarus, right? Yeah. It honestly kind of reminded me, I mean, of course, this character is a lot more extreme, but it kind of reminded me of Omni Man. Okay. Like I said, Omni Man is a little more extreme, but the fact that they're both like characters who fully believed in what their mission was. Yeah. And were not obsessed, but their mind was just completely set on doing that. But deep down, there's care for the people that they were with. Yeah, exactly. That kind of helped them overcome that obsession. Yeah. With their mission.
Yeah. And I think another thing I want to bring up is I think, was it you or Brittany who were saying someone was talking about how they really underused Angelina Jolie's character? Oh yeah. And I believe one of y'all were saying this. I can't remember which of y'all were saying anything today, but I just know one of y'all were saying this.
Marcus has amnesia.
Yeah. I know we're going to say this. It's that Angelina Jolie, the reason why she said yes to this is because Chloé Zhao directed it. Yeah. You know.
And she believed in her vision.
Yeah. And so,
because it was Brittany who was saying this, I think she even said that Angelina Jolie even thought that it was going to be a smaller role, and that she had asked for a small role. Yeah, and so the fact that it was even a pretty substantial role.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think she was underused. I think everyone was used really well, honestly. All the acting was really good in this movie. I'd never really seen the guy who played Icarus. I can't remember his name right
Richard
now.
Madden.
Yeah, Richard Madden.
I know he was on Rocket Man, and I think that's the only other thing I've seen. I know he was on Game of Thrones too, but I haven't seen Game of Thrones.
His acting is really good in this movie. But like pretty much everyone is, and all the characters are really well written. And also, and hopefully I don't pronounce this too wrong, Dong-seok, the guy who plays Gilgamesh.
Yeah, he was also on Train to Busan.
Yeah, he was. He was really good in this movie. But his character was really good, and the character's death was really nice as well. The way it was put together was actually pretty emotional.
Yeah,
and it was a really good death. And also just the fact that they killed. I mean, as far as I can tell, it seems like 3 of these characters,
right? At
least 2.
Yeah,
they kill off Salma Hayek's character. They kill off Gilgamesh, which Salma Hayek's character's name was Ajak, Gilgamesh, and then I'm pretty sure they kill off Icarus. We didn't really see it, so maybe he'll come back or something like that.
Yeah.
But as far as we know, we killed off 3 characters.
And I also really love how with Icarus being kind of a villain in this movie, I really liked how they didn't just have him be forgiven by the rest of the Eternals at the end of the movie after everything he had done, and just be back in the group. And I also loved how they kind of did the deviants. There's one kind of like sentient deviant that kind of like gained sentience during the middle of this movie. And I kind of liked how they did it to where it was like they kind of felt slighted by the Eternals because the deviants were created first, and then they were kind of rejected by the Celestials, and then the Celestials created the Eternals. Yeah. So they kind of had a hatred towards the Eternals. I do kind of wish they did a little more with that sentient deviant, because it kind of got laid on the back burner for a lot of the movie. True. But the scenes that they did have with them, I really loved. And I loved the idea of that conflict really well.
Honestly, like I said, if I'm trying to think of really actual flaws, it's just that first third or fourth of the movie. And it really wasn't even bad. It was just like it just took it a second to actually get find its stride. And once it found it, it just went all the way through, and it was great. Yeah. Like honestly, I don't know where I would rank it, but I do know it's one of my favorite in the MCU.
Yeah, I do want to see it again and try to let it soak in before I kind of put it in my ranking. But it is going to be pretty high up there on my list.
We are going to say that Eternals is 87% awesome. Well, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, comment and tell us how you felt about Eternals. Let us know about how stupid liberals we are, or whatever you want to say. Just to make a real quick point, we really don't like politics at all. But we just have our own beliefs and stuff. But and then tell us about where you would rank this movie. You can put a whole list if you want to, but there's a whole bunch of movies. You can just put kind of where, like in a general area, and just explain to us what you liked about it. If you disagree with us, explain to you why you disagree with us. And I know this is a longer video, but there's just like there's a really big thing about this movie I really wanted to bring out, because when I was watching yesterday and when I walked out, I just got really mad. Not like really mad, but I was just kind of like irritated. Yeah. Of how many people were getting mad at this movie, how many people were calling it woke. Mm-hmm. Whenever nothing was really, all of the things they say were woke were never really that big. Exactly. They never made them that big. They were just happened. Right. They were just there.
Yeah, and it just sucks, because I really hope that Marvel doesn't look at the critic reviews and just thinks that this was a failure and they shouldn't make more MCU movies like this. Slower paced and less comedy. But anyways, don't forget to follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, all at 2 Awesome Men.
And as always, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later.